All right? Of those 7 gifts, they are prophecy. Now remember, we differentiated between to prophesy, when someone prophesies or utters, okay, a word that is prompted by the moving of the Holy Spirit. We're familiar with that. The second one is the office gift, one of the 5-fold gifts of the prophet, okay? And then the last one is the motivation of prophecy. Prophecy, because we had a chance to, the class went a little fast yet last week, was one who, number one, has several distinct characteristics, and one of those being is they have the ability to discern the intents of the heart. They're ones who clarify the word. Often, they're also people who really see things in black and white. They don't shy away from confrontation. So if you look in the Old Testament and you look at all the prophets, particularly the what we call the major prophets, right? What did they do? They confronted evil, right? They confronted when either the country was getting off track or when the kings were getting off track. What happened to David? Remember we covered that, right? When he fell into sin, what? A prophet that we don't know as much about, Nathan came to him and confronted him, right? In a way that most people would have been very afraid to do, because you're very careful how you speak to the king, right? So to do that, you have to take this test. In a lot of ways, it also explains why your character is the way it is, because your character it hinges on your natural gift and talent. And that's why it's pretty reliable. First of all, it's biblically based, and number two, it's proven. And it's something you can do by repeating it over and over and over and getting consistent results. Usually tells you if there's a high degree of reliability in that test or what you're trying to do. Now that we've gotten to that, does anybody want to guess, Pastor Kathy, what her number one gift is? Anybody want to guess? Prophecy, okay. Now, can anybody remember some of the highlights of the gift or characteristics of those in prophecy? I already talked a little bit about it, but what else stands out to you about that gift? Not just the prophesying itself, but the personality. How do they behave? How do they communicate? Anybody? Everything tends to be black and white, right? Mm-hmm. Right. Where the role of the elder is more of the what? The speaking gift. Can an elder do things that are doing actions? Yes, of course they can. Sure. And can someone who is a deacon do things that have a spiritual context to them? Absolutely. But what you will notice about each one of them is that one is going to do one thing more naturally. The deacon and who serves in that position is going to be more inclined and feel more comfortable doing things that are action gifts, doing gifts. Whereas the elders, okay, that it's a spiritual, they're going to be more comfortable and more capable of doing in those areas where it's spiritual ministry. That's praying for people, encouraging people, ministering to people, giving counsel to people. So do you see the difference right there? Let's go ahead and let's move into number 2. The first one we're going to talk about now is the gift of service. The gift of service. All right. In the gift of service, and I'm trying to get this to open up here, the first thing you need to know is that it meets practical needs. In the church, there are 2 broad categories of needs. There's the spiritual needs, right? Whether it's prayer, encouragement, right? Those are practical areas, even education. But then there's the doing. One of them is more of a speaking gift. So the prophet is nearly always a speaking gift. And then there are the practical gifts. The gift of service is a very practical gift. And what they do is they focus often in meeting the practical needs of the church, whether it's the building or people within the church. So let's talk a little bit about some examples there, all right? Their fulfillment, the key word here is practical assistance or practical help. And they find fulfillment comes from seeing the needs of others and meeting those needs through the expression of their hands. Let's look at some biblical examples. Number 1, in Romans 16, verses 1 and 2. Romans 16, verses 1 and 2. All my scriptures today are out of the New Living Testament, all right? And it says this, I commended you, in Romans, it says here, I commend you to our sister Phoebe. Okay, Phoebe, remember that name, who is a deacon in the church in Cenchrea. Welcome her in the Lord as one who is worthy of honor among God's people. Help her in whatever she needs, for she has been helpful to many, and especially to me. So this is Paul. This is Paul writing, okay? And he is describing someone who works in the practical areas. Now you notice it says she is a deacon or deaconess. Does anybody know what the word deacon means and what the position of a deacon is?
Helper.
Huh?
Helper.
Server or helper. The word deacon literally means a server or helper. Mary and Martha. We know the story, right? Verse 38, it says, as Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Now her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he taught. But, there's the conjunction. Don't you know, every time you hear something going on, then you hear but, you go, okay, now the other foot's about to drop. Okay, there's always something there, the rest of the story. But Martha was distracted by the dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all of the work? Tell her to come and help me. But the Lord said to her, my dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her. Martha is just trying to do what is the correct thing. She wasn't planning on doing something bad. But what happened is, in her zeal to use her gift, which under nearly other circumstance would have been the most wonderful thing to do, right? To be the hostess with the mostest, she was missing the point. And here's what we see, is that she let the details get her eyes off the big picture, all right? Now, I'm telling you that because if you have that gift, one of the things you can do is you can go get so zeroed in on the projects that you miss the bigger spiritual things that could be happening there. And we have to learn that. Every single gift, all right, has both an area that is a plus, meaning what? Talent, ability, but it also has a negative side, okay? Absolutely. And in this one particular gift there's a danger that you can fall into more of the details and forget the bigger picture of what's happening. So, all right, one of the things about someone who is strong in the gift of serving is, and I'm at fault. Now, in my list, serving is in the upper 1/3 echelon. So if I was going to go percentiles, okay, I'm probably close to the 80 percentiles in this. So I do understand. And here's one of the things is that sometimes instead of asking for help, they'll all just do it by themselves. Okay, and that's an area that I fail in because I should do more delegating it. But I get frustrated and go like, it's just easier if I just do it myself than I try to have to explain to somebody how to go do it and then try and meet them and go through all that. Now, that might seem very noble, but two things are happening. Number one, you will tend to overexert yourself and then burn out. And number two, you're really robbing somebody else from their opportunity to maybe develop a skill and eventually take over that.